The time has come. Gather around the campfire here, Reggie. It's our second edition of Flashback Friday and a blast from the past. And before I start, I got to preface where this came from. Remember last week we highlighted Magic Johnson after I was watching Luka in the playoffs. Got me thinking about NBA history, guys that changed the game forever. Well, this week we're talking about another guy who changed the game forever, and not just one sport, but all of sports. And he did it not on the field, but off of it. You ever just sit back here, Reggie, and look at these monster contracts guys are signing in free agency and say, wait a minute, how much? How did we get here? Patrick Mahomes, 10-year, $500 million deal in 2020. Steph Curry won the championship last night, 4 years, $215 million. Mike Trout, 12-year, $426 million. 12 years ago, in 2008, Alex Rodriguez signed a 10-year, $275 million deal. Absolutely unheard of at the time.
Yep.
But how did these types of contracts manifest? Where did it all begin? There had to be a time where this was not the norm in professional sports, and there was. In fact, there was a time before 1974 there was no free agency at all. It's wild to even think about, as the drama of modern free agency has kind of become as much a part of professional sports as the games themselves, but it wasn't always that way. Enter a man named Curt Flood. Flood was a center fielder for the Cardinals in the 1960s. He hit a career .290, three-time All-Star, won 3 pennants, 2 World Series, won the Gold Glove 7 consecutive seasons in a row.
Sheesh.
Rock solid career, although maybe not Hall of Fame worthy, but what he did off the field would go on to change the game of not just baseball, but the sports world entirely. At the end of the 69 season, Cardinals traded Curt Flood along with Tim McCarver, Brandon Brown, Joe Horner to the Phillies for Dick Allen, Jerry Johnson, and Cookie Rojas. But this trade turned out to be different from all other trades because this time Flood refused to go. So since the early days of professional baseball, a short clause was inserted into every major league contract. It basically gave the owners complete control over their players. Even when the player's yearly contract was up, the owners could just literally renew his contract, essentially binding him to the same franchise for life, allowing him to be paid whatever the owner felt he was worth or traded on a whim. So sounds kind of unfathomable now, but Curt was very much aware of what was going on in the world at the time, and he was very much aware of the fact that he did not have his civil rights. For the right to determine his own future as a ball player, Flood would have to sue Major League Baseball, cut to the core of America's pastime and how it operated. Curt's thinking was, hey, this is ridiculous. What's my specific worth? I mean, what am I really valued at? Like, what do I need to be paid if I'm putting up 7 consecutive Gold Gloves? I have a unique value to bring to the table, and I want to be paid for it. At that point, Curt kind of had to make a decision. He had to go all in. He knew his job and career as an all-star player in the league, it was going to be in jeopardy. I mean, he made a choice and chose to stand up and fight for what he believed in, that every player should at least get the opportunity to go seek out their true value and kind of maximize their time spent in the league. With the unprecedented backing of the newly formed Players Union, his case went all the way to the Supreme Court, but he could not beat the owners, and he lost that case 5 votes to 3. To demonstrate the unfairness of the existing system, though, Flood sat out the 1970 season, forfeited his income for the year, and by the time he joined the Washington Senators in 71, he was pretty much toast. I mean, that was it as far as his career goes. He was never really the same, and after that long, exhausting court battles, he eventually left baseball shortly after. His head's down, he's bumming, he's thinking, that's it, I lost. But the stage had been set. Curt Flood put shockwaves into motion, causing a stir among athletes. Now in all major sports, the seed had been planted. While Flood was out of baseball and out on his own, thinking the system had failed him once again in the courts, Flood's case had laid the legal groundwork for players to settle the issue at the negotiating table. And just 3 years later, in 1974, pitchers Andy Messerschmidt and Dave McNally won an arbitration case that found owners could no longer renew players' contracts in perpetuity, opening up free agency to all veteran major leaguers. The owner's power grip on the players was officially shattered. Free agency as we know it today was born and began to shift the balance across not just baseball, but all American professional sports. 3 months after Floyd had filed his lawsuit in 1970, Oscar Robertson and 13 other professional basketball players sued to abolish the reserve clause in the NBA following an earlier failed attempt by star Rick Barry. 6 years later, they reached a settlement to bring free agency to their sport. Flash forward to the present. After 4 years in Miami, look what LeBron's return did to Cleveland, showed how elite players could shape not only their own fate, but kind of the entire NBA ecosystem. The owners lost their monopoly, and now the players were finally calling the shots. You can't mention Curt Flood without mentioning his lawyer and founder of the Players Association, Marvin Miller. He was the pillar, he was the catalyst to getting his case all the way to the Supreme Court, sending that ripple effect throughout all of sports landscape that still obviously exists today. Flood paved the way for athletes to turn their talents into millions of dollars and build generational wealth, yet still to this day, for all Flood did to change the way sports paid their players, Curt Flood never garnered a single dime for his accomplishment. Marvin Miller, his lawyer, went on to be inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but for all he did, Flood still to this day is not. Reggie, what's up with that? Curt Flood, one of the greatest stories and legacies, who gave his life, he gave his professional career for his teammates and the players that would come after him, knowing he wouldn't see one single penny for all his accomplishments. A guy who many athletes and fans still have never heard of to this day. I say get him into the Hall of Fame next opportunity you get. And if not, at least spread the word of his story and remember the name Curt Flood and everything he did for the game of sports. Reggie, that's the story of Curt Flood and how he started free agency as we know it. And that is your blast from the past on Flashback Friday.
Man,
what do you think about that? Curt Flood, man. I didn't know about that.
So it's really interesting because, I grew up a Cardinals fan.
Okay, there you go.
And, we would always hear the name Curt Flood, like in a lot of different conversations because of what he did. You talk about some of the Cardinals greats, you put, Bob Gibson there, Stan the Man, New Age, with me, you got Willie McGee, Ozzie Smith, Albert Pujols now, and, Yadier Molina, even back in the day, it was Mark McGwire.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is they have to find a way to get this guy into Cooperstown, whether it's just like some type of special courage award or so. Like they have to get him into the Hall of Fame somehow. Even if they feel like it's not on his plane, which the stats are there and they show he wasn't this power hitter or anything, but the dude is as consistent as they come. I mean, 293 career hitter,
rock
you got to
solid.
get this guy in,
Solid,
and especially for what he did, he goes down as really a martyr, for modern day sports. And it's funny because I was talking to one of my coworkers and he was just saying that he can't really stand the NBA because all the players he feels are mercenaries. And I'm like, I can see where you're going with that, but
Sure.
I think it's deeper than that. I think it's more nuanced than that. Because here are these elite athletes who know they only have a certain amount of time to maximize their value. And if they aren't getting it where they are, that's why, they talk about people taking a hometown discount and all that stuff. I'm never for athletes doing that. Look, if they want to, take less because they want to win and they want to win championships and they feel their current situation helps them better win championships, then fine. But also, because of free agency, everybody gets a piece of the pie. So you see it where they went to, we'll talk even going back this far, earlier in the decades, KG leaving, going to be with Paul Pierce, and then Ray Allen going over as well, and they formed the Big Three, and really kind of started that whole thing in the NBA where players were cool with just going and teaming up and doing their thing.
Good point.
And it's just funny because you might look at them as mercenaries, but then when another player who's looking to get paid goes and follows another person who left to go get paid, and now you have two or three of NBA's top superstars on one team, now you're talking about a championship. The Warriors just last night won championship number 4. Well, 2 of those happened because Kevin Durant made the decision that, he just didn't feel like he could win anymore in Oklahoma City. He felt like he reached the ceiling. So he did what he felt like was great for him and got paid, went to Golden State, won 2 rings there in 3 years. Then he goes and teams up with Kyrie in Brooklyn, and they're chasing a ring. LeBron leaves, goes to Los Angeles. Then Anthony Davis gets recruited there. And then last year, Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, all these names
Right.
are coming and doing that. Like, we don't see all this movement, all this, you mentioned Mike Trout. I just read an article last night talking about Shohei Ohtani possibly getting a 4-year, $200+ million deal, highest average of any player in modern day sports history. And this is all made possible because, I always like to say this phrase, Curt Flood, he walked so others could run. And it sucks that he wasn't able to reap the pure benefits of it financially for himself. But at the same time, now all of a sudden, all these players are, getting paid, getting their just due for their value in that short amount of time, especially like you look at the NFL, man, you get one hit, your career could be over with.
Toast.
And so and the fact that they don't have, fully guaranteed contracts in the NFL.
Right.
I understand on both sides of that coin because football is so high impact and it could be so limited.
Barbaric.
You don't want to put money into a player where you don't know their availability from year to year. And so you don't want to guarantee that. But on the player side, they're like, look, well, I'm putting my body on the line. I'm putting my body at risk. Like, if something happens to my life, to my career where I can't play anymore, like, I want the guarantee of that money being there regardless of what happens to me because I play such a barbaric sport. And so I think there needs to be a conversation, had around that as well. When you look at guys like Kirk Cousins signing fully guaranteed deals, like, that is very smart. And at his position, that's a risk that teams are willing to take, but maybe not for a running back or a wide receiver or a linebacker because, they're a little bit more high impact than maybe a quarterback would be on a snap-to-snap basis. And so, kudos to Curt Flood for doing what was necessary. You hate that it seems like he kind of fell on the sword for it to happen, but martyr for this game, he walked so that everybody else in sports moving forward could run.
Well said. Great feedback there. I love that you brought up KG. He was the one who started that whole trend too, going over to Boston, winning those finals, building that superstar kind of team. And neither of us were around for this either, but before Target Field, before the Metrodome, it was the old Met, located literally right where the Mall of America now stands today. Built and owned by Calvin Griffin, who owned and started the Twins baseball team as we know it today. He started the Twins in 1961, but like a lot of these owners, once free agency started, once Curt Flood put that in motion, these guys still tried to penny pinch and they tried colluding behind closed doors. They're going, hey, nobody throw out any crazy deals or offers. So, we can all save some money. But it wasn't long until these owners ran out of money. And like Griffin, he had to sell the team in 1984 to Carl Pohlad, who owns the team today. A lot of these owners, though, were forced to sell their teams because they just didn't have the capital and money to stay competitive with what they had to pay these players anymore. And again, Curt Flood never made a single penny off any of that. Sports-altering movements and accomplishments, unbelievable. He's not in the Hall of Fame. What are we doing? Hey, let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. Hit us up in the YouTube comments or on Twitter @LockedOnMinnesota. Did you know who Curt Flood was? Did you know his story, how free agency started? What do you think about free agency now and some of the crazy money these superstars are making? A wild story, I'll admit, I knew little about until doing some research, but something I just needed to share on Flashback Friday and take a blast from the past. All right, looking forward to hearing all the feedback from you guys. We're back here Monday breaking down more Twins, Vikings, plenty more.